Hey, would you look at that? I upgraded from a chubby little Twitch emote to a DeviantArt OC. um, yeah, I don't know. Subscribe because of my wow, my DeviantArt OC. Listen, I think of YouTube as a hobby, and I think of drawing as a hobby of my hobby. So expect nothing, and I have to do everything with a mouse. So I get what I get when I get it. Alright. Anyway, what are we talking about today? Monarch of Death. Um, you know, what is there to say? Well, it's it's one of those like fun bad series. I'd probably give it like a 7. It's it is it's not really an isekai, right? It's basically this guy turns back time to before he became like this dark lord because he wants to eat and experience human pleasures. So he basically just flips, time on its head, turns everything back, and does it with his good buddy. So he goes back in time to before he became like an actual undead, and he just learned about necromancy and everything. But the idea is like the conflict, I guess you could say, is that he had this like extreme power in the future, right? Like super massive power, huge amount of power as a necromancer, to the point where he's almost like godly. He rules the world with like an iron fist. But when he was sent back in time and put into this, fleshy, weak human form, he kind of like threw that power aside, but it still kind of came back. So now his power has like its own will and is, kind of impacting the world and basically trying to like kill everybody. So he kind of has to deal with it, otherwise, his brand new life is just going to go down the drain. That's like the gist. As far as like quality goes, I mean, the story isn't really that like deep, it's just him traveling around, fighting necromancers, and meeting different characters, and it's not an isekai, but it's definitely not. It's not an isekai, but it has a lot of similar vibes because it's just like that typical like OP fantasy, character, right? Where he just goes around meeting new characters, fighting different people, increasing his abilities, blah blah blah. You get the idea. It's a pretty typical fantasy. I will say the reason I gave it a 7 is mostly because it's just it's fun. It is one of those fun series. I think of a series like this as like a comfort food, like the OP powers, the very like straightforward plot line of just like turning back time and then trying to solve the problem you created, and just the steps of like fighting different characters and meeting different characters. It feels pretty straightforward, but it's comfort food. You've seen it before. It's a fun little story just to take some time to read and just enjoy. You know what you're gonna get. Like, I'm not gonna say otherwise. Like, you see this kind of character, these abilities, and that first plot point of like turning back time, and you get the idea. You've seen it, and you know what you're getting, but it's still satisfying. Like, I would still say it's a lot of fun. It's one of those things where it's just very enjoyable. I don't know. I appreciate it overall. But I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like once you've read 2 or 3, you're pretty much going to catch everything that comes up as it comes up. but it's still fun just because it's like the fun tropes, like, you know, the OP abilities, the random characters that are basically just tropes that are walking in human form. It's like you're not going to get surprised by this. It's literally never in a million years going to surprise you, but it's fun. It's you know, the fights are relatively well done. The art's pretty satisfying for the most part. I mean, I can't really complain. The main character, like, he's pretty likable. He also has this kind of like sidekick who's I think the idea is that he's meant to be like his knight from when he was a human that kind of stayed with him the whole time. He's basically just like a comedic side character that kind of, you know, at times will show his abilities, but for the most part is meant to just carry a joke. Like, there's points where he like dresses up to, you know, sneakily find out information about other people's powers, or I don't know, like when they go back in time originally, they haven't eaten in like 70 years, so they're like flipping out in a restaurant about eating like pretty low quality food just because it's so good to them, because wow, you know, they haven't eaten in decades, so anything will taste good to them at this point. It's just like, you know, it's like that, you know, he's there for some comedic relief, not to, you know, do anything crazy, not to surprise you, just to have some fun with like, oh yeah, I get it, like, you know, he's a side character. They're really the only two main characters. A little bit later on, they introduce like this knight from this period who kind of gets contracted into their numbers and ends up being like a kind of like the straight man, I guess, to their comedic gig, where he's always, you know, doing something crazy or unexpected, and she's there just to be like, you know, basically just to get the reaction, right? So at that point, it ends up just kind of being like, I'm waiting for like the like shocked reaction anytime something happens. Which, I mean, it's fine. I think it at least gives something a little different. Like, you know, these trope, you know, reliant dynamics can only last you so long, right? Eventually it's going to get you no matter what. But still, it's not bad. It's just, I wouldn't expect anything that's going to be groundbreaking. It's just fun. I mean, I like it. I will say, I mean, if it's your first time reading these kinds of stories, it might even be pretty decent. I read probably hundreds, so I've seen it all, but yeah, if it's like one of your first ones, I definitely think it's like not a bad pick. Like I said, the main character is relatively likable. The side character's a little bit plain, but it's fine. And then this, you know, other character that's introduced later, she's again fine, but again, it's more so just we need a character that can be around at most times to have that, you know, wacky reaction. Not really much deeper than that. But yeah, I mean, overall, like, the story, it's not bad. It's just very straightforward. You know where it's going. It's never gonna surprise you. It's just like satisfying fun. I guess just to end it off, I'll do the old SAE. What is the SAE? Well, it's story, art, enjoyment. Story-wise, like, it's nothing special, but it's not poorly written or anything, so I'm not gonna say it's terrible. I would say it's like a 5. Like, it's pretty middle of the road, you know. It's not gonna blow your mind, but it's fun. Art-wise, it doesn't do that trope of, like, you know, when they do magic, it like blocks your entire vision and you can't see any of the art, so I will give it some credit there. And the art's pretty well done for the most part, so I'd probably give it like a 7. It's not super unique, but it's quality. So I think, like, if we're going high quality but not super unique, I think a 7's pretty fair. Enjoyment-wise, like, I'll admit, it was just fun. I think it was one of those series where, like, I like the concept of, like, you know, the necromancy idea. They're going back in time. And, you know, just this experience of, like, we just want to, you know, experience human, you know, living and everything like that once again. So, I'm gonna go an 8. It was really fun. I even think, like, if I saw more chapters, this is one of those series I might actually go back and read. So overall, I would say it probably averages out to about a 7. Yeah, like the story is fine, not gonna blow your socks off or whatever, but it's fine. The art I would say is quality, but it's not necessarily unique, so 7's pretty fair. Enjoyment wise, I mean, I think it's just a fun series. It's not going to blow your mind, but it is fun. And I think that kind of matters. On an objective scale, yes, it might go down a point or so, but I think if we're talking like experience, I think it is actually pretty fun. I would even say like some of these could go up depending on, how many stories like this you've read. I mean, if you haven't read a lot of these, I think this might be a pretty solid start. Pretty fun. But yeah, I think a pretty fair rating is a 7 overall. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I'd appreciate if you could, like, comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Maybe leave another story you'd like me to read down below. Even if I've read it before, I'll read it again. I don't know. I have time here and there. And, yeah. I'll see you.